5 years ago, Toyota had a two-row mid-size crossover in their lineup called the Venza. It slotted between the RAV4 and the Highlander in their lineup. And for 2021, the Venza is back, and it's back with a much more Lexus-like look to the design. Now, in the first video that I showed you guys, we talked about the exterior styling, the interior space, the technology. However, we didn't talk about driving impressions and pricing because that was embargoed until now. So in today's video, we're gonna get behind the wheel of the all-new Venza. We're gonna talk about how it drives, we're gonna talk about the pricing, and we're gonna see if the new Venza is worth a look if you guys are looking for a crossover that's not quite as small as the RAV4, but not quite as big as the Highlander. So I apologize if I left you guys hanging really badly in my first Venza video. Obviously, I must abide by the embargo. And now that the embargo is finally over, we are behind the wheel of the 2021 Venza. That's right, the Venza is back after a 6-year hiatus. And let me tell you something, I actually really liked the first generation model. It was pretty rough around the edges when you looked at the interior and how cheaply built it was. But it had an amazing V6 engine. It was quick with the V6. This new one only comes as a hybrid, which might surprise a lot of you because it's only a hybrid, but because it's a hybrid, this car gets 40 MPG if you guys go for the LE, 39 if you guys go for the XLE and the limited grade model. Now, the one thing about this new Venza that I mentioned in the first video, it is a smaller car versus the old Venza. At 186.86 inches long, this thing is about 3 inches shorter than the old Venza. Its wheelbase is also 106 inches long. It's about 3 inches shorter as well. It's 2 inches narrower versus the old Venza. So the new Venza is a smaller vehicle because it's based on the Toyota Harrier. Compared to the RAV4, this is only about 6 inches longer overall. They share the same wheelbase, they share the same width. They are pretty similar to drive. In fact, just sitting behind the wheel of this car, it doesn't really feel all that big compared to the RAV4. It still actually feels like I'm driving kind of more of a compact car versus a midsize SUV. And the powertrain in the Venza is the same powertrain that we get in the latest RAV4 Hybrid. So you have the combination of a 2.5 liter Atkinson cycle 4-cylinder that makes like 176 horsepower on its own. It combines with 3 electric motors. There's a separate electric motor at the rear axle that will basically give this thing all-wheel drive. Toyota says it can send up to 80% of the power to the rear wheels, although that's when the battery is fully charged. The Venza doesn't feel like a very sporty driving vehicle. The steering is pretty much identical to the last RAV4 I drove. It's very secure and confident, and I barely feel the extra 6 inches that's at the back of this car. It's not really that much longer, so if you guys are hoping this would feel kind of like the same size as like a Honda Passport, or even like a Subaru Outback, or a Nissan Murano, or a Hyundai Santa Fe, the Venza feels considerably smaller. So that might be, something that some of you are really looking for, is something that, even though it's a little bit bigger on the outside, it still drives very small. Visibility in the Venza is also very good. I can see out of the car very well. Very thin, slim A-pillars. Toyota Safety Sense 2.0 comes standard on this car, which means I've got adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, or lane trace assist, what Toyota calls it, blind spot monitoring with a cross traffic alert. This is a very practical car, and you know what? I do feel that it's a little bit more refined than the last RAV4 Hybrid. The seats are more comfortable, which is nice. The interior is a lot nicer. I love the big 12-inch display, which you can't get that on a RAV. 8 inches is the largest you can go with a RAV4, so that's one of the reasons to get this car. The cooled seats work really well. It's a hot day today, but this car's interior is keeping me very cool, and that Stargaze headliner is also a really cool feature, and if I want more light, I can just push this button here, and voila, it just detints itself. So that's a really, really cool feature, and I wasn't really expecting that at this price point. Now, putting my foot down here, this is in sport mode. It has that typical hybrid CVT feel. The RAV4 Hybrid gets to 60 in around 7.8 seconds, maybe 7.5 on a good day. The Venza feels slightly slower. It's a little bit heavier than a RAV. I'm gonna say this is probably about 100 pounds heavier than a RAV4, so we're looking at around 3,900 pounds, something like that. Which is not bad. This is lighter than the old Venza, because remember, that had a heavy V6. It was a bigger vehicle. The old Venza was around 4,100 pounds. So this does feel considerably smaller, and if that's what you're looking for, you're gonna be pretty pleased with this car. And as you can see, going around some corners, it's not a sporty vehicle, but it is a very comfortable car. Even in sport mode, the ride quality is very smooth, very, very quiet in here. The engine doesn't make too much noise as long as you don't put your foot down. I'm just surprised that there is no paddles. Instead, if you want to access the manual mode, you have to use the shifter here, but there's no tach, so I can't really see what revs I'm doing. And the CVT will kind of give you these fake shifts. Don't use the manual mode. The manual mode is absolutely useless. What you're gonna do is you're just gonna put this car into normal mode and you're just gonna cruise. That's the whole reason why you bought the Venza. It's super refined in here. It gets very good gas mileage. On my longer highway trip that I took this car on, it got 38.5 MPG. 38.5, just like that. In city driving, I've been getting around 35.5, and that's with me doing this, putting my foot down, and you can feel this thing is very responsive. Even though it's a CVT and a 4-cylinder combo, I don't love the sound of the engine, but you know, if I need to pass somebody quickly, or I just need to accelerate, as soon as my foot goes to the floor, it's pretty responsive. I feel a nice surge, a nice wave of torque. And you kind of just have to get past the buzzingness. But once you get past that, which most of you probably won't accelerate like that, I just do it for demonstration purposes. This car has plenty of adequate power for most people. And will you miss the V6? Some of you may miss the V6 if you're trading in your old Venza. You're gonna notice this is a smaller, more nimbler car, but it's also a more refined car. It has more safety features. It's a better built car as well. It's just really, really nice. It makes me question, what's the point of buying a Lexus with this car? Like, I just drove the NX200 or NX300H, the hybrid version, and the Venza, the new one, is a far more superior product to the Lexus. I mean, sure, the Lexus has a slightly nicer leather on the steering wheel. The seats are also a little bit more plush on the Lexus, but you got a much better infotainment system in the Venza with a bigger screen. You have more standard safety, more standard equipment in this car. You have things like a heads-up display, which you can't get on the Lexus, and you can't get that panoramic sunroof with the Stargaze headliner in the Lexus. So really, Toyota has basically outbuilt Lexus with this Venza, and it's going to be interesting because there's a new generation NX coming out, and it should be based off of this car. It should be based off of the Toyota Harrier, and it should be even nicer than this car. But really, I find very few gripes. I mean, I don't like the touch-sensitive panel here for the climate control and for the actual screen. I think they should have just given us a volume knob and a tuning knob that I mentioned. The digital rearview mirror is a nice touch. The seats also surprisingly have good bolstering as well. So there's very little to complain about with the Venza. And really, if you're looking for the ultimate RAV4 hybrid, like let's say the RAV4 Hybrid Limited wasn't nice enough for you, this is the one that you should be looking at, because Toyota has really built something that I think is going to be a huge hit for them when this vehicle goes on sale next month. So after spending the last couple of days driving the all-new Venza, it pretty much drives exactly how I expected it to drive. It drives exactly like the current generation RAV4 Hybrid, which is a very good thing. Remember, they share the same platform, they share the same powertrain, and really the Venza is about 6 inches longer, but I had trouble noticing that extra 6 inches when I was driving this thing. It has a very nimble feel, it has a very comfortable ride quality, it has a very luxurious interior, and as you guys see from the design, it seriously stands out. This thing looks like a combination of a Jag and a Lexus. It just looks like a much more premium SUV versus the RAV4. It's also going to be a lot more rare because Toyota sells like 500,000 RAV4s every year. Now I'm going to imagine this is going to be a hot seller for Toyota when it goes on sale in August, but really it's going to come down to, you know, the pricing of this car. Now, of course, the new Venza is not perfect. Remember, it competes with mid-size 2-row crossovers like the Passport, Outback, the Hyundai Santa Fe, and it is not quite as large as those vehicles. So if you guys actually need a 2-row crossover that has more space in the trunk and in the back seat, you may want to look at some of the Venza's competition. However, if that's not important to you and you just want something that's a little bit sleeker, a little bit more luxurious, a little bit more technology, the new Venza is certainly worth a look. Now let's talk a little bit about the pricing of this car. Now, I don't have final confirmed pricing on this vehicle as of this filming. I'll be sure to include some text in the video once Toyota releases the final spec pricing of this car. But I'm going to estimate that the Venza starts for base LE around $30,000, maybe slightly under $30,000. The RAV4 Hybrid starts around $28,500, so this is probably about $1,000 to $1,500 more. All-wheel drive is going to be standard. This fully loaded limited version I'm going to estimate is around just under $44,000. I'll be curious to know if that's actually the case when Toyota announces final pricing, which would put the Venza right in the middle of all of the competition. Now, keep in mind, some of the competitors are more expensive. I'm going to estimate that this is going to be slightly less expensive because it is not quite as big of a vehicle. But with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the 2021 Toyota Venza Hybrid. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.